So today in Chabad, many people say Good Yom Tov because it's the Yom HaGi'ula, the day of liberation of the second Rebbe, Reb Dov Ber, the son of the Alter Rebbe. The day of liberation refers to when he was imprisoned for roughly a month or so, a little more, a little less. It's in Hayoim Yoim today, the exact dates when he was taken, but he was released today in the year 1827, I think. And he passed on a year later in 1828. The basic reason, this is like the basic reason for his imprisonment was a malshinus. He was informed on by, unfortunately, some relatives that were from the Misnagdim, and they felt that he had taken more money than he should have from the coffers of the movement to build himself a large house. Now, historically, the first of the Lubavitcher Rebbes, which settled in the town of Lubavitch, was this Rebbe, the second Rebbe, Reb Dov Ber. And from that time on, Chabad Hasidim were also called and also known as Lubavitcher Hasidim because of the town that they settled in. And it was he in 1813, a year or so after his father's passing, during the year of his passing, who settled over there. And they were there for approximately 102 years till 1915 or so, when the Rebbe Rashab and his family escaped to Rostov. And ultimately, the Lubavitch Yeshiva in 1916 left, I believe, Lubavitch and went to Kremenchuk, which is in Ukraine, and then to Rostov as well. Now, the Mitteler Rebbe, every Chabad Rebbe has a specialty, has a certain message. So, the most famous aspect of this Rebbe, the Mitteler Rebbe, Reb Dov Ber, was his harchava in Chassidus. And let me explain what that means. Harchava means broad, wide. What does that mean? Expansion. If you look into a mimer of the Balatanya in Likutei Torah Or, which are the two classical Sforim, which has many of his discourses. I'm not going to say most, because today we have already 20, 30 volumes of his discourses throughout his entire life. But the bulk of the Maimorim that were chosen by the grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, to be put into the Sforim, Torah Or and Likutei Torah, which covers the Chassidus on the 5 Chumoshim, plus Shir Hashirim and Megillas Esther, etc., are in those two Sforim. And if you look there, and you compare those to his son, Reb Dov Ber's Maimorim, on some of the same verses and the same chapters and same ideas, they're considered brief compared to broad, wide, and long. So you could have a Maimor in Likutei Torah that's 2-3 pages, and the Mitteler Rebbe has 10 pages on it. Same Maimor. So the Mitteler Rebbe was known to open up very broad, with lots of dugmaos, lots of examples and parables, the concepts that he learned from his father and that his father taught in his Chassidus. So Chassidim and the Rabbeim compared this to a Nohar, a river. There's a Mayon and there's a river. There's a well and then there's a river. The well is drops, right? A wellspring. What happens when a wellspring gets to the river? It's expanded, expansive. So Hasidim and the Rabbeim say that the Mitteler Rebbe is the Bina of Chassidus. The Baal HaTanya, the Alter Rebbe, one moment, the Baal HaTanya, the Alter Rebbe is the Chochma of Chassidus, and the Mitteler Rebbe is the Bina, and the Tzemach Tzedek is the Das. We'll talk about that, Tzemach Tzedek, another time. But the Alter Rebbe is Chochma because Chochma is the geometric point, the flash, the Nakuda. Comes along the Mitteler Rebbe and takes the same Nakuda and really opens it up and gives you lots of food for thought. Yes, Hillel, what do you want to say?
Question. I seem to remember somewhere, I might be confused about this, that earlier in his career, that it was the style of the Baal HaTanya to give short ma'amarim, which are sort of, and that he expanded it later. Is that a correct knowledge?
That is correct knowledge, and that comment refers specifically to the difference between before Yutes Kislev 1798 and after Yutes Kislev. In other words, the advent of Yutes Kislev, the monumental event which we'll celebrate next week in Mitzvah Hashem, right, and has been celebrated for 200 plus years by Chabad Hasidim worldwide, is because the Alter Rebbe left jail, and from then on, in his style of Hasidus, there was an expansion from before and after. But what we're talking about,
is that related to the Maimonei Hafutza idea?
And that's related to the idea of Yafutzu Mainosecha Chutza. Correct. However, which means the dissemination of Hasidus to the outside, all over. However, if you compare even the discourses from after Yutes Kislev 1798 to the Mitteler Rebbe's discourses, it's still compared to brief versus broad. Okay?
Got it.
So it's very good that you pointed that out, and it's good that we're discussing it. And it's hard to see this unless you take 3 Maimorim, one before Yutes Kislev, one after 1798, one after Yutes Kislev 1798, and then you take the Mitteler Rebbe's, and you'll see the difference. Now there's another difference. Not only is there a difference in quantity, it's a difference in quality too. Many of the Maimorim of the Alter Rebbe before Yutes Kislev are very fiery, short and fiery, meaning very passionate and very direct, and very little explanation, more like it says this is this, and this is this, and therefore this is this. You could say that some of those Maimorim of the Alter Rebbe have a little of the feeling of some of the other Hasidic thought from some of the other Hasidic Rebbes at the time. Okay? If you to look in Hillel into Magid Devar Yaakov, for example, of the Magid, right? You'll see Hasidus, but it's very brief and it's very non-descriptive, okay? And the students, Avram, of the Magid, by and large, the Moranayim, of the Chernobyl, right? With the Skver Hasidim today, that is their go-to sefer, right? All Chernobyl is Moranayim. Take a look in the Moranayim, and you'll see that the Hasidus part of the Moranayim, which is very Kabbalistic and very little explanatory. It's not explained. What's more explained is, the drush, the kind of day-to-day verbiage. But as far as the Hasidus is concerned, let's take, for example, we'll learn Tanya, Nefesh. A Nefesh has 10 spheros, right? So in the Magid Sefer, that's what it'll say. In the Moranayim, that's pretty much what it'll say. Come to the Baal HaTanya, you learn chapter 3 in Tanya, he says the 10 spheros, the Chochmah is the Av, Bina is the aim, and he explains a little bit about each. In other words, he starts giving you food for thought that you could think about from in your own terms and in your own world. That was the uniqueness of the Baal HaTanya's addition to the Magid and his students, right? But nevertheless, compared to what he did after Yutas Kislev, it was still considered brevity. And what I'm telling you today is, since it's the Mitteler Rebbe's Yom HaGeula, that compared to the Mitteler Rebbe, all of the Balatanya's Chassidus is called brevity, not only in quantity, but also in quality. Now, what do I mean? For the human mind to be impacted, you need to understand. To understand, you need data, right? If you want to know the trajectory of where the plane should fly to drop the bomb, you need to know what's going on inside. You need intelligence. So when you have the data put together in a computer and very much lined up and organized, and that's given to the bombers, they know exactly what to do. Imagine imagine they didn't have that. They couldn't do it because the bombs will fall in the wrong places. And you see, Taka, that our enemy, right? They keep on throwing these bombs, these missiles, and most of them land in empty places. Because they don't have that data that we have, Baruch Hashem, right? So data is in our terminology knowledge, detailed knowledge, not just I believe. What do you believe in? What is belief? What's faith? What's trust? What's divine providence? So the Mitteler Rebbe takes these nekudos that the Balatanya already mentions and talks about in Tanya, chapter 48 and 49. Mamish, you can find everything's in Tanya. Tanya is the foundation of the house. That's the Tanya, right? But it's a foundation. So without a foundation, the house crumbles. But at the same time, it's only a foundation. Comes along the Mitteler Rebbe, Yoini, and takes that foundation and builds a nice big villa with rooms, with place, with comfort. So it's a qualitative difference as well, not only a quantitative difference. So that's the second point I want you to make clear, that we're talking about the Mitteler Rebbe. Now, the Mitteler Rebbe engaged in very much in starting to set up places for Jews to be able to live and to have parnasa. Because the Pale of Settlement, with all the restrictions and the Tsar and everything else, which later became more and more and ultimately led to communism and everything else, but Yidden were scapegoats, and Yidden had pogroms, and Yidden were always chased from here to there. So the Mitteler Rebbe worked very hard to get the government to recognize the Jewish community and to give them land, to work the land like they're doing in Eretz Yisrael, right? Same idea. Not the same idea as far as Zionism and Eretz Yisrael, but the idea of making a place where we can live and raise families and have a Yiddish life, have a Jewish life. So the Mitteler Rebbe did that very much. And in particular, they talk about the Cherson colonies. The Cherson colonies were colonies, exactly what the word says, and there were Yidden there. And the Mitteler Rebbe sent the noted Chassid Reb Hillel of Parich, who was called a Shadar. What?
I was there. I was in Kherson.
You were in Kherson. So the Mitteler Rebbe, okay, so you know what we're talking about. The Mitteler Rebbe sent Reb Hillel to travel around the Kherson colonies to say Hasidus, to teach Hasidus, and to raise funds for other Yidden throughout Russia. And we call this a Shadar Shluchah de Rabbanon, an emissary of the rabbis. And the Kherson colonies were a specific place which he focused on to accomplish this idea to give Yidden the ability to live in an area, work the land, have some parnasa, and yet stay connected to Hashem, to the Rebbe, to Hasidim, etc. So he sent regularly this emissary and several others. So this is another very important point when we talk about the Mitteler Rebbe's activism, his communal thinking of doing that. Now, the Hasidim of the Mitteler Rebbe, being that they had these lengthy discourses to study, they say that the greatest intellects at that time of Chabad Hasidus were his Hasidim, and they spent hours studying these discourses and thinking about them and living with them. And this was very important. Now, at the same time, let's not kid ourselves. Reb Mendel Futterfass would always say this: if you think most Hasidim during the time of the Mitteler Rebbe were on this level, they weren't. There was average Joe Schmo, Yankel Todris, guy working in the field. But guess what? They were, many of them, common, simple folk, but they knew they were Hasidim. What did the Mitteler Rebbe do for many of his Hasidim? He wrote and said discourses in Yiddish. That was the going language of the Yidden in Russia at the time, besides Russian, of course. And he wanted them to identify with Chabad Hasidus, so he spoke their language, and he spoke it very down to earth. So, for example, this is important, Hilo, for you to know this, for everyone to know this. There is a discourse called Pokeach Ivrim. And Pokeach Ivrim means open up the eyes of the blind, like we say in the morning blessings, Menashe, right? Pokeach Ivrim. And in this discourse, if you learn it and you don't cry, then I don't know what you're made out of. He lays it into you about when we see what we're not supposed to see, Pokeach Ivrim, the eyes, and he's heavy. And he wrote it in Yiddish, I believe. And he wrote it for a particular chassid. Of course, everyone else then benefited from learning it. But in other words, he talks to the common person, and he says it in Yiddish, so you can't tell me, I don't know Kabbalah, I don't know Hasidus, I don't know Gemara. You know Yiddish? Yeah, I speak Yiddish. Then listen to what I'm saying. You understand? Now, this was the type of Rebbe that he was. On one hand, he was like Shlomo Karlbach used to say, high Sheba high, highest and highest, right? Greatest and greatest. And at the very same time, he dealt with the lowest of the lowest. Because he wanted the lowest of the lowest to get involved and to lift himself up. And Taka, it happened. With Hasidim who came from nothing. There's stories of certain svarim that we have that the Mitteler Rebbe wrote for the simple boor chassid who later became a phenomenal chassid, a big Oved Hashem, and a big understander of Chassidus. But initially, they were a boor, right? So that was a very interesting thing that he did. So in a sense, you could say, this is my own thinking and words, that the Mitteler Rebbe came down to the common folk. With all of his greatness, the Alter Rebbe, as we know from learning so much the Alter Rebbe's Torah, his Chassidus, is you have to really use your head, and you have to, Well, the Mitteler Rebbe, as much as that's true, and even maybe more so because his Chassidus is so expansive, both in quality and quantity, as I said before, nevertheless, there's an aspect to it that he speaks what we call jargon. Jargon means the language of a person, Yiddish in this case. They say about in Haifa, there used to be a chassid, Rabbi Reuven Dunin. He was a tractorist. He drove a tractor. That was his parnasa. He came to Lubavitch Yeshiva in the 1950s when my father was already in Yeshiva. My father remembers the day he came in, and he came in with shorts. He came from a modern home. He came into Yeshiva, and he became such a chassid of the Rebbe that he outed everybody else. And Reb Reuven made Bali Tshuva. There are, In almost every city you go to in Eretz Yisrael, you will find a Baal Teshuvah from Ruvain Dunin. Just have to ask. And what did he do? He spoke their language, which sometimes wasn't nice language. But he really got into, you understand? He didn't come off as a holy rabbi, a Rosh Hashiva, a mashpia. You could say in a way he came off as someone who's from the streets. But yet he has a beard, and he's a chassid. And it made them feel so comfortable. In Ramat Gan, he teaches Nigunim and Tanya, that famous singer now, Chabadnik, I forget his name. He's a product of Ruvain Dunin. He has people who have made Bali Tshuva, and Bali Tshuva, what was his gift? Besides that, he was a very sincere, passionate person who spoke with his heart. And he said it the way it is. And when he came here for a year or so to the Rebbe at Crown Heights in 770, and he would have Yechidus, he would mamish talk his heart out to the Rebbe. He could cry in front of the Rebbe and just break down and say what bothers him. And the Rebbe answered him, and the Rebbe told him to be b'simcha, and the Rebbe, many things. There's a whole book about him. It's very interesting. I don't know if it's in English. I know it's in Hebrew. So his name was Rumi Dubin. So he lived in Haifa. So what I'm saying is the Mitteler Rebbe, in a sense, did the same thing. I'm Taka Rebbe, I'm the Alter Rebbe's son, and the Hasidus is deep stuff, but at the same time, you're not there yet, and I have to come down to you. So I'm going to write something that talks your language. And your language means the shtusim, the foolishness that you do. I'm going to address that, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to get into it. And we're going to show you how it's ridiculous and how that's not who you are. You're better than that. And come on, get up, move on. And he did that. And that's a very, very special gift that he did, which is in the history of Chabad and in the lifestyle of Chabad. He's credited for that idea. So I just wanted to mention that as well. Another interesting nakuda seems like that the first kind of choir that the Lubavitcher Chassidim had, and it became a significant part of their culture, was the Mitteler Rebbe's Chassidim. The song that we sing for Yud Kislev is called the Mitteler Rebbe's Kapelle. Avram, are you familiar with it? Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ladai, ay, ladai, ladai, da, 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 ay, ay, ay. I'm going a little fast. Ay, 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 ladai, ay, ladai, ladai, da, 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 da. Yes, Hillel.
What's a capella?
Oh, so a capella, it means choir. I don't know if it's Yiddish, Russian, Ukrainian. It's called the Mitteler Rebbe's choir. They either composed the song or sang the song, and the Mitteler Rebbe loved it. And ever since then, this niggin is attributed to the Mitteler Rebbe. I don't think he composed it. The second part goes, ta-ra-ra-ra-rai, ta-ra-rai, la-da-rai, la-da-da-da-da-rai, rai, la-rai, ta-ra-rai, la-da-rai, la-da-da-da-da-rai, rai. Hi la dai, ta da dai, la da dai, la da 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 da, ay 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 ay, ta da dai, da 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 da, hi la da 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 da, la da 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 da, ta da da da. Ta-da-da-dai, ta-da-dai, ta-da-dai, dai-lai, ay-dai, ta-da-da-la-la-lai, alai-ai, ta-da-dai, da-da-dai, and the fourth part, ta-da-dai, ay-dai, da-dai-dai, hi-dai, da-da-da-da-dai, da-da-dai, 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 dai-la-da-da-lai, ha-la-dai, dai, da-dai, 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 tam bam ba bam 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 ba 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 bam ba bam ba bam ba bam ham ba ba bam 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 ba bam. It's sung much slower. Each stanza is repeated twice. There's 4 stanzas. And the previous Rebbe has a whole talk on the meaning of this song. And basically, it encapsulates the opposite feelings within us, from high to low, from good to bad, from positive to negative, the opposing forces. And how that is, you have to sing the niggin and find it in the niggin. We'll let Avram come up with that when he gets to know this niggin and masters it. But it's a great song. So who is attributed to this niggin? The kapelle, the choir. So it seems to me that the Mitteler Rebbe's Hasidim were the ones who kind of inaugurated a choir within the world of Chabad. Okay, I can't say for sure, but because I never heard of a kapella by the Alter Rebbe. I don't remember such a thing. And even if there is something in a line or two, but this has become like the niggin of the kapella. And just this past Shabbos, in the have the gem sheets of people's stories. They have a woman, music emeritus professor from Wits University in South Africa, and she in 1978 she had yichidus with the Rebbe with her husband, and the Rebbe said, "I heard you love music, and you're a professor of music. Which song is your best?" He asked her, and she said the Mitteler Rebbe's kapella. And then the Rebbe went on to some of what I'm telling you. The Rebbe went on to speak to her about. She says, unfortunately, it says she doesn't remember many of the details, but she had a whole discussion about the Mitteler Rebbe's niggin with the Rebbe. What I shared is part of what she did remember. So the point being that the way I see it is, this idea of a choir isn't just another choir. You have these choirs. They're very beautiful, very nice. It seems to me that the choir of the Mitteler Rebbe, the Mitteler Rebbe's choir, was, permeated with the passion and the mind of Chabad. Again, I'm not saying that every one of the choir members there was a Chabadnik. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. We'll never know. But there's no question that such a niggin had to be it is permeated with the Chabad ethos. And this Chabad ethos, as sung by the choir, is demonstrative of what the Mitteler Rebbe brought to the Jewish world. Finally, and one last point, is the Mitteler Rebbe wanted and had his Hasidus printed during his lifetime. Not all of it. Since then, we've had much printed that never was printed before. But these Svarim, Pokeach Ivrim, Shari Oira, Shari Yichud, I believe all of those and others were printed during his lifetime. And what he did was, because people didn't have pennies to pay, so he made the price very cheap, and B he had them print. They printed what's called a boigen, a folio, a page 2 or 3 at one time. In other words, he didn't have them print an entire sefer, an entire book at one time, because that would be more expensive, and people couldn't afford it. It means they wouldn't learn the Chassidus. So the Rebbe in 1984. On Yud Kislev at the Fabring, the Rebbe Fabring every year, Yud Kislev, the Rebbe said there's going to be printed today a mimer of the Mitteler Rebbe, and he then went on to repeat that mimer, and he said, I'm only having it printed one mimer, even though there's a whole book which will eventually be printed. Why? Because just as the Mitteler Rebbe made sure everyone can afford to pay a few kupkis for the mimer, I want everyone to be able to learn the mimer on the day of Yud Kislev, and to be able to, and not say, I can't afford it, it's $10, $20, it's costing you 50 cents, it's costing you $1 for one mimer. So the idea was that the Rebbe made it very clear. The Rebbe took everything from the past 200 years of Chabad and brought it down so clear to us, to the average person. He made it so clear, in other words, that the Mitteler Rebbe was so much Hasidus, was so much part of his bloodstream that he wanted everyone to learn it. So he even had it printed during his lifetime. You have to understand. Normally, in those days, for a Rosh Hashiva, a Rebbe, a Rav, to print their own stuff was unheard of. It's like, who are you? And they would never do that. After their passing, they left instruction, if you could print it, but not during their lifetime, many. But here, he wanted it to be printed. Why? Because the bottom line is he wanted another Yid to learn a vart of Chassidus, a concept in Chassidus, a little idea in Chassidus. And that's why the doctors would say that if you cut his hand, what would come out? Not blood, but Chassidus. It's a metaphor, of course, but that's how much he was, glued to Chassidus. He didn't live a very long life, but he left over lots of Chassidus and the deepest Chassidus. And the following 200 years or 150 years of Chabad, the greatest Chabad thinkers would study his Chassidus, in addition to the others, but the deep stuff was in his Chassidus. So this is a little, yes.
Chassidus, is that what they learn in the Tomchei Tamima Yeshiva?
They don't really learn the Rashab. Now, why did they learn the Rashab? Because the Rashab, a lot of his stuff is based on the Mitteler Rebbe's Chassidus. And he took it to a further step in the analysis. So they figured that if you learn that, you get the Mitteler Rebbe. But the individual gifted Chassidim and those that wanted to pursue Chassidus in the highest level did learn the Mitteler Rebbe's Chassidus. But in Tomchei Tamimim, as a general rule, they learned the Rashab's Chassidus.
And the Rashab of the fifth Rebbe.
Rashab of the fifth Rebbe, and his. Go ahead. What?
Tzedek was the third.
Someone says the third. So this was his great grandfather, the Mitteler Rebbe, Reb Dov Ber. So may the neshama of Reb Dov Ber, Ben Reb Shneur Zalman, have an aliyah. Yesterday was the yahrzeit, his birthday and yahrzeit, and today is the Yom HaGeula. So it's an appropriate day to ask Hashem for brachas and to give back and to make get another Yid to learn a little Chassidus, whether it's in this class or you privately, whatever, it's so wonderful. It really helps in so many ways. Have a great day. Tomorrow we'll continue learning Tanya. Zay Gazon. Take care. Good Yom Tov. Good Yom Tov. Good Yom Tov. Good Yom Tov. Good Yom Tov.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.